Hey everybody, my name is Adam Sale, and for my case study, I will be talking about sports betting and gambling in the United States. I'll be talking about its legalization and illegalization. Specifically, I'm going to talk a lot about the history of it, its moral implications, and its implications in the sports management industry. I will also talk specifically about the 1992 PASPA law that was passed that illegalized sports outside of Nevada, or any kind of state that had a grandfathered system in. And then I will talk about the 2018 Supreme Court case that was finally ruled on about 2 years ago about bringing sports gambling back, to have states make the decisions on whether it should be legal or not. To start off with the history in the United States of sports betting and gambling, we're actually going to go back to the 18th century. So, although this might not directly be related to sports, this was the beginning of the importance of gambling in the United States. So, way back in the day, in the 18th century, when we were fighting the Revolutionary War and forming the Continental Congress to fight the British, we actually did something with lotteries. So back then, they didn't have proper taxation yet on citizens in the 13 colonies. So what they decided to do was start having government-funded lotteries, where when people put money in, a certain allotted amount would go to the winner. So when they started doing this, it's actually how they raised the money, primarily for the armies and to form the Continental Congress and eventually form the federal law system that we have today. So we'll flash forward a little bit to the 1850s, and horse racing really took a hold, and betting on horse races became very big in the U.S. This was right around the time of the creation of the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, and famous races that we still have today. Horse racing became very, very large and very popular in the U.S. This is also right around the time that greyhound racing and that sort of thing also started going to the mainstream. It gave people a good outlet to bet on. Now, this is right around 1850, and as time is going on, it's also starting to grow with baseball and football in the U.S. are starting to begin and create leagues. Now, after a time, betting also becomes very, very popular with baseball and with football. But one thing that happened, and something you might have heard about, is the 1919 Black Sox scandal. This was the first major sports betting scandal in the U.S. For those not familiar, what happened was 8 White Sox players were paid to throw the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds. Now, the White Sox were a team that had been consistently beating everybody and either making it to a World Series or winning a World Series in the past few years. The Cincinnati Reds were also a good team, but they were an underdog. So, even people within the organization of the White Sox itself were paying their own players to throw games. It wasn't the whole team, but there were 8 players, key players, including one of their well-known pitchers, that were all paid to throw the game. So this created one of the first major issues within sports related to gambling and cheating scandals. This also ushered in the first commissioner of baseball. With the 1919 Black Sox scandal, people realized that baseball needed some management, and they ushered in the very first commissioner of baseball, whose name was Judge Kennesaw Mountains Landis. Quite a name, I know. But he ended up being the first commissioner of baseball. I found this interesting that it took a sports betting cheating scandal to be the first thing that actually brought upper-level management over all the leagues into a major sport. Now, as we look to 1949, Nevada officially legalized sports betting within its state. So at this point in time, there were no laws. There were not many laws regulating sports betting and gambling, and a lot of them were done behind closed-door practice, and a lot of them were actually mob-controlled. So to create more legitimacy within the state, Nevada decided, while they are legalizing casinos, getting those commissioned and built, they decided to have a little more legitimate claim hold on the sports betting industry. So they legalized sports betting within Nevada, but then this created a problem. Nevada already had an issue with mob and criminal ties, where many criminal organizations were currently creating their own foothold also within the industry. they would be laundering money through there, doing extortion, and multiple other crimes that they were able to get away with by using casino money. So at this time, when sports betting was becoming more and more popular and sports were becoming more and more televised and accessed by others, this suddenly created an issue. So in 1961, Robert F. Kennedy created the Wire Act. So this was then passed by Congress, and it did not illegalize sports gambling, but it basically did. It made it impossible to bring sports gambling equipment that was manufactured in one state and bring it across state lines to another one. So this hurt the casino industry, but it also aided in stopping wire and money transfers going from one state to Nevada or another state where legal sports gambling or betting was made. So this basically made sports betting only legal in local areas or that state or region where it was legalized. After the public started hearing more and more about sports scandals between Pete Rose, between Michael Jordan, and all the other kind of sports gambling that was going on, and were starting to wonder about the integrity of the sport, eventually this got pushed to the point that there were even commissioners in the NBA, NFL, and MLB that believed that sports betting was an issue. So in 1992, PASPA, the Pro and Amateur Sports Protection Act, was passed by Congress. This reserved all states to cease sports betting and gambling unless they had previously legalized it. And all in all, this left Delaware, Montana, Oregon, and Nevada all the only places to do legal sports betting. So for the next portion of this, I'll be moving on to the May 2018 case from the Supreme Court that eventually would make a ruling whether to overrule or to continue the 1992 PASPA law. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the sports environment that was going on in 1992. So in 1992 and surrounding years, and the reason that this really was passed was because sports was at the forefront of of society and social change at the time, with players like Michael Jordan, Pete Rose, Jose Canseco, great players that were all that were all at the top of their industry, but might have had issues with sports betting or might have had issues even with doping schemes, and all kinds of things like that. And a lot of people were worried about the integrity of sports and the message that they were sending out, especially to younger people over this time. That had a lot to do with what passed the 1992 Pro and Amateur Sports Protection Act. But there were a lot of downsides to removing something like sports betting. It was a large industry that people were continuously a part of. It was an industry that many knew could not just simply be stopped by creating a law, and instead would create illegal pathways for it. So once this 1992 PASPA law was passed, it actually increased mob influence within sports betting and gambling, because now they had an unrestricted and untaxed sports betting outlet that they could do with illegal bookies. So this then became a major issue within the U.S. And was not something that was resolved up until recently. Example of the sports industry, specifically the NBA, being hurt by this 1992 PASPA law can be seen in 2007. In 2007, Tim Donaghy, a referee in the NBA, famously pled guilty to throwing multiple games, including playoff games, in the NBA in a 5-year span when being paid by the mob to do this. He was paid to call fouls that shouldn't have been called and even try to mess with the box score if possible. He threw those games because he was being paid by the mob to in regards to illegal sports betting. This shed light on the issue that although they may have made sports betting illegal, it was still a very lucrative industry that was going on behind the backs of the government. This made many people realize that the government needed some kind of involvement with sports gambling. In 2009, the beginning of the legalization and working towards the repeal of the 1992 PASPA Act began. This began with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. Phil Murphy was dealing with many states around him, like Maryland, beginning to have a stronger hold in the casino industry, and New Jersey was beginning to lose a lot of its most profitable asset, the casinos. So where he was concerned, he believed he needed to take back something that would help boost New Jersey's economy. So he decided to bring back parlay sports betting. Parlay sports betting had been legal since even before 1974 in New Jersey, and with the PASPA law, they were able to grandfather that back in. So in 2009, they allowed for parlay betting to begin again in New Jersey. Parlay betting allows people to bet on 3 to 12 different NFL games, and if all of their bets are correct, then they get a large payout. This is much, much worse odds than single betting. So then at this time, after that was passed and they had legal parlay betting within New Jersey, he decided to take it to the next step. He pushed his case, the case Murphy against the NCAA, and he began a very long trek on this case in 2009. He began pushing it and made it to the Third Court of Appeals. This basically stated that states should have the rights to, that is an infringement upon the 10th Amendment, and that states should have the right to monitor and control their own gambling within their state. This also was going to help New Jersey with 1992 because there was a lot of mob influence and a lot of corruption within the gambling industry, but it was also one of the main financial supports within New Jersey's economy. Now here we are 9 years later. It's May 14th, 2018. The decision has just been made by the Supreme Court, whether to repeal or to maintain the 1992 PASPA law. It's gone around on the court floor for almost a decade, but has finally made it to the end. So my question for you, the class, is this. Regarding our sports management class and what we've seen, there are multiple issues that could be at stake with legalized sports gambling within the U.S., whether it comes to players throwing games, issues from front offices, or even referees throwing games and being paid to do so. So, what are potential issues regarding sports management and the federal legalization of sports betting? My second question, would there be a difference between collegiate and professional athletes? I ask this question because professional athletes are now paid, especially with the new contract negotiations that has started in the last 2 decades, are now paid millions and millions of dollars a year, especially the most well-known ones. While college athletes, although it is in the works now, are not currently being compensated very well. Do you think that there could be different moral or management issues that could come up with college athletes being bribed rather than professional athletes, and the likelihood of that? And now it's May 14th, 2018. The Supreme Court has ruled, and it has voted 6-3 in favor of ruling that 1992 PASPA law be repealed. Now states have full authority to create legalization within the state of sports gambling and their own monitoring of it. So now we fast forward to 2020. 17 states have now legalized sports betting in some way or form, and it currently is a $400 billion a year industry. I personally believe that this helped both the sports industry and sports fans alike. It created legal pathways for them to bet. It helped with the creation of things like FanDuel, DraftKings, and things like that no longer had to be run just through Nevada and through states and areas where it was legalized. It gave states the right to tax and also help them build revenues for their states. It can help schools and many other programs. I believe currently that with the situation that we are in, with athletes and the amount that they are paid, and also the scrutiny that they go under on a daily basis, I believe that it is very, very hard to have players throw games, and I do not think that it would help with any of the integrity of the sport. I thank you guys for listening. I hope this had a little bit of insight and some cool, interesting facts about sports betting in the industry. It's something that I am very interested in and have a passion for, and I hope you guys all have a great break. Thanks.